according to ancient Hindu texts, all of creation has three qualities. And these qualities are the three basic elements that make up all matter. All matter, all of the material world consists of three elements. And the words being given here are Satva, Rajas and Tamas. We also hear that the words being used as Sato gun, Rajo gun and Tamo gun. And there are many interpretations to these words. Sato gun is generally described as something pure, goodness, supreme knowledge. Rajo gun is described as activity, movement, inertia. The opposite of that is laziness, slowness, which is tamas, tamogun. And sometimes tamogun is also being described as selfishness or greed, self-centeredness. So what does that mean? How can the universe have these three qualities? Now, throughout time, how mankind has understood the world is to always break everything that we know about the world into three parts. And we can see this in so many different things that we know about the world. If we start with time, there are three basic elements of time: past, present, and future. If we look at temperature, something is either too hot, too cold, or just the right temperature, moderate. Even in ancient cosmology, we would say that we have a heaven, a hell, and the earth, where we live, the higher regions and the lower regions. If we think about our life, what does life consist of? Birth, living, and dying. And even the most basic understanding of mankind is that we have three bodies. We would say that we're made up of mind, body, and spirit. In the Indian traditions, we talk about three bodies being the astul, sarir, that which is visible, the suksham sarir, that which is subtle, hidden, and the karan sarir, that which is very deeply ingrained within us. Even science talks about the building blocks of all matter being made up of proton, neutron, and the electron. And this is something that we see in lots of different traditions. In Christianity, they talk about three elements of God, three ways to see God, the forms of God, and they call this the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And even when Christ is born, Mary and Joseph are visited by three wise men. When we look at ancient Hindu texts, we see that this idea of categorizing the world into three goes even further. We've come across this idea of the Trimurti, which is that the whole of the world starts and relies upon creation, a creator, Brahma, a sustainer, Vishnu, and a destroyer, Shiva. We've talked about the qualities of matter, which is this Satva, Rajas and Tamas, Sato, Rajo and Tamogun. In the Hindu text, it talks about three states of consciousness. In our day, there are only three main ways in which we function. Either we're awake, which is Jagrat, or we're dreaming, which is Swapan, or we have a deep sleep where there's no dream, which is Sukpat. So again, there are only three ways that we can function during our day, three states of consciousness. Even if you look at Ayurveda, which is the ancient medicine of the East, they talk about the whole universe having three energies, doshas, which are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So wherever you look, there is this idea that the universe can be broken up into three different states. Collectively, the three, when they get together, create Maya. Maya is reliant on these three. So Maya is the creation that is consisting of these three qualities. And it is said that everything is Maya. Maya includes the animals, the plants. Maya includes the mountains, the land, the water, the stars, the moon, the planets. All of these things are subject to these three qualities. So one way that we can look at Maya is as the physical world. We can say Maya is the physical matter, form, anything that is manifest. And we talk about the divine or God being something beyond Maya. So that's the basic way in which most people look at creation and divine. But there's a danger in looking at the world in this way. The danger of looking at the world as Maya and the divine as something that is beyond Maya is that what we do is that we then create a preference for the non-form over the form. We say the world is ordinary, the form is ordinary, and God has to be something extraordinary. So God is always invisible, God is always hiding from us. God is always something that's intangible. And so what we do is we create God in this image. Because we see the world as pretty normal, we create God as something that is abnormal, something that is beyond what we see in the everyday world. And Gurbani has rejected this idea of seeing God as something that's always far away and distant and invisible. Guru Arjan Dev Ji talks about Nirgun and Sargun, formless and form. Nirgun being of no qualities and Sargun being of full of qualities. Guru Arjan Dev Ji says, Nirgun aap, Sargun bhi ohi. You are formless, of no qualities, and you have all qualities. Kala tar jin sagli mohi. Manifesting its power, it fascinates the entire world. So, God is Maya and God is beyond Maya. God is the world and God is beyond the world. God is not restricted to this world. Now the question is, if God is everything, if God is the world, then how come we don't experience God in this way? How come we don't see the world as this divine being? Why is it that we see Maya first? Why is it that we are distracted by it? And why is it that Maya can be broken into three parts? Why is three so significant? Why don't we experience something beyond Maya? Why don't we experience God? The key comes down to how we experience is also reliant on three things. How we experience the world is reliant on three. The three parts that we rely on in order to experience anything is subject, object, and the connection, the association between the three. In simpler terms, in order to experience anything, there has to be a me, there has to be a you, and there has to be some connection between me and you, some association between us. And this is how we engage with the whole of creation. We rely on these three parts. In order to understand ourselves and understand the world, we break everything down into these three parts. We can also talk about the knower, me, the known, you, and knowing, which is the association between the knower and the known. So far we've only ever talked about the me and the you, the duality. There is either me and there is everything else, the you. And the duality relies on this third part, the association, in order to create this duality. So this third state, this association, we can call it association, we can call it relationship, we can call it attachment. Any sort of identification that we make with either me or with you creates the duality. The duality doesn't exist until I identify with this body, and by identifying with this body, I reject everything else. So I've created an association with me and a different relationship with you. So this is how duality is born. This is what we mean by duality. Duality means our sense of identity, our individuality, and our separation from everything else. This is me, and everything else is not me. Even the word individuality has the word duality hidden within it. So in the same way, this I amness, this me, is a direct result of a relationship that I've created with this thing that I identify with. I only exist because there is something that has created an association, an affiliation with this I. So the I has created a relationship with itself. It says, I am. And by saying I am, everything else becomes something else. And as soon as you create this identification with me, so there's a me, I've now identified with me, and I don't identify with everything else. You've created all three. And once Maya comes in, reliant on these three parts, God disappears. It's reliant on these three elements. Quite often, Maya is referred to as an illusion. And again, this is a very difficult word to translate. Maya is one of those terribly difficult words where there is no direct relationship with any word in English. So sometimes you see the word illusion. And illusion is also inaccurate. If we think about the word illusion, what we mean is something like a mirage, something that looks like it's there, but it's not really there. That's what we mean by an illusion. And that isn't the right word here, because the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky, the earth, they're all actually here. This is here. So it isn't an illusion. It isn't something that isn't here. So perhaps a better description of Maya is a false perception of reality, or the delusion rather than the illusion. So all of these things are actually here, so we can't say that they're an illusion. But what we do is we think that everything that we can see and touch and feel are real, that this is the ultimate reality. We look at the whole world and we say, this is all there is to the world. So that is a delusion, a false perception that this, what we can see, is the ultimate reality. And Gurbani says that the reason this is false, the reason this is an illusion, or rather the reason that this is a delusion, is because everything around us is actually temporary. Nothing in this world is permanent. Everything is temporary. So Maya is the delusion that temporary things are permanent. Maya is the delusion that this temporary world is actually something that's real and permanent. Like this is the ultimate reality. That's our delusion. That's the confusion that we've put upon the world. So what does this delusion do to us? What does Maya do to us? By constantly focusing on everything that we can see, by constantly focusing on what has been created, what we lose is the underlying essence of creation. This aliveness. We look at a tree as a tree. We look at a plant as a plant, an animal as an animal, a person as a person. And we think that that's reality. But what we're missing out on is underneath all of that, there's an essence. There's something that makes all of those things connect. There's something that unites and binds all living things together, which is ultimately this aliveness. Everything is alive. In one description or another, even the rocks, even the stars and the moons, All are created, all exist, and at some point will all die. The very basic definition of something being alive is that it can be created, it is alive, it is around, and it can be destroyed. And the whole planet, and the solar system, and the sun, and the stars, and the moons, all follow this life cycle. So by constantly looking at all of these things, what we do is we miss out on something that's the underpinning essence of all of them. And this is what Maya does to us. We get distracted by what there is, and we can't see something beyond it. We just stop. Maya becomes a barrier. Maya is like a wall. As soon as you see it, you don't see past it. That's as far as you go. And going on this spiritual path, as soon as you sit down and you try and meditate, as soon as you try and connect with something beyond Maya, Maya steps in. Straight away, anything that allows you to be distracted away from this meditation comes in. And all the things that distract you are things that have been created. All the world that you know around you, that's what distracts you. You're only distracted by the things that you know around you. So Maya is this constant distraction. And how does Maya represent itself? Everything is Maya. Everything is a potential distraction. So Maya has sometimes been described as a female with many different faces, with many different disguises, many forms, many beautiful outfits to distract you with, many delusions, many ways to stop you from connecting to something beyond it. Maya doesn't want you to see past the Maya. Maya is happy getting all of your attention. So Maya, we can say, is this innate nature within us to be distracted away from our oneness. Maya is the innate nature to be distracted away from our own oneness. And it's so natural to be distracted. It's so easy to get lost in thought. And it's so easy because we continue to experience the world from the perspective of I. The very way in which we look at the world is from the perspective of Maya. We look at the world from I. And by looking at the world from the perspective of I, everything else becomes you. We create a relationship with ourselves, and we create different relationships with everything else. So we are looking at the world through Maya, and we also find God in this same way that we try and find everything else in the world. The search for God is a search through Maya. And that's why we find it so difficult. But our perception, the very way that we look at the world through the lens of I, has been the cause of the greatest suffering in the world. I and our individuality has caused the most number of wars, the most hurt, the most greatest suffering has come from this I, greater than any disease or natural disaster ever has. So Maya means to be distracted by creating relationships, by creating attachments.